Hello, everyone, and welcome to Philosophication with Ginger and the Beard. I'm Michael, and I have red hair.
And I'm Jason, and I have a beard.
So, to cover my ass because I'm in the military, I got to start every episode by saying the views expressed in this show are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of the Department of Defense, Department of the Navy, or the U.S. government.
Yeah, so I had this discussion. It was just today on Facebook, and somebody made a post. It was, I guess I don't know if I should say names. Probably not. It was the nukiest nuke who ever nuked that we went to school with. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, no one's going to know what that means, but yeah, a nerd.
Yeah. So anyway, he made a post on Facebook today that was like, it said, I gotta remember the wording of it, but it said, no one, I'm paraphrasing, but no one who voted for Trump would care if he actually did say the Trump N-word thing. And so I disputed that. I was like, nobody really? Like, they're all, like, none of them care about racism. And so I was disputing that. I was like, maybe they are not just totally okay with racism like you're saying they are. Maybe they don't like racism. They think it's terrible. But there was some other aspect of either Trump or Hillary or something else that they care about more than that. And maybe someone could theoretically accept that Trump is a racist and like hold that opinion while also at the same time care about something else more and still want to vote for him, right? Those opinions aren't contradictory. Like you could hold those both at the same time. And so we were going back and forth about this. We were actually getting somewhere. It was a decent enough conversation.
I think what's ridiculous about this entire conversation is the hypocrisy. And sure, this is whataboutism, but people only give a shit about character of candidates when it's the other candidate. No one cares about the character of their guy. That's nothing. That's not a Trump thing. That's an everybody thing. You know, the people that supported Hillary Clinton had no problem with her damn emails being, for her classified information being on unclassified servers and all the crap that should have been criminal and would have been criminal in any other case. Whatever. Nobody cares. Like, no one cared about Bill Clinton cheating on his wife in the Oval Office, lying about it. Like, I think lots of people care about character, but like you say, yeah, so I guess it's wrong to say no one cares. I don't think that's true. I think lots of people care, but they just know that we're probably never going to get a good person to run our country, to run the world. It's always people that had to, get to the top somehow, and it's usually not a super squeaky clean path. So I don't know. People, they care, but those same people that pretend that the character is all that matters to them when they hate Trump, if the roles were reversed, they would care, but they wouldn't care enough to vote for Trump, right? If Hillary said the N-word sometime in her life, you think they would vote for Trump because of that? Of course not. They can on the one hand find it vile and still vote for them because you only get two freaking options. That's the system we have. It's one guy or the other guy. So anyway, you go ahead. I just wanted to.
So yeah, that was the point. Basically, that was you can find that vile and also still think the guy was the correct choice.
Right.
Those things aren't contradictory, and you seem to be implying that they are, and that you can't hold both of those opinions at the same time, which I was disputing. So
like in a perfect world, you could have both. You could have perfect character and a perfect resume. Like, but when was the last time that happened? I don't know.
So we were going back and forth about this a little bit, and it was a decent enough conversation. Like he did come around a little bit, and we started actually getting somewhere. And this other guy gets involved, and I was trying to get this point across that it's not inherently contradictory to hold those two opinions at the same time. And he was basically this guy was even further left than the guy who made the post. And he was basically responding to everything I said with, but Trump is a racist and people are either okay with it. Like he kept repeating the claim that people who voted for him are okay with racism, which is exactly what I was disputing in the first place. But he was like, just kept repeating that claim and kind of using it as a premise for the rest to base the rest of his argument on.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's already it was a foregone conclusion for him, or it was
right.
a premise on which to base other conclusions. There was no evidence.
I'm like, no, that's the thing I'm disputing. Like,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. You're not responding to the objection I just raised. You're just repeating the claim. So anyway, he was arguing badly, and then another guy jumped in who was probably a little more to the right and started arguing with him badly. So we have this guy who was arguing against me badly, and then another guy jumps in who's kind of on my side and starts also arguing badly.
It's the worst when you're kind of killing it and some idiot jumps in on your side.
Right. And then it becomes a pissing contest.
Yeah.
And the lefty McLefterson was like, stop, you're gaslighting and you don't even know it. So
what's gaslighting?
I'm going to try to explain what gaslighting is. So gaslighting is psychological manipulation. It's basically, the idea is that the person who's doing the gaslighting is emotionally preying on an emotionally weak person. So they're manipulating this person into kind of questioning their own reality and questioning whether they can, their powers of reasoning. And basically it's a tactic. It's a psychological manipulation technique to get this person to become dependent on the person doing the gaslighting. So it's a real thing, and it's kind of a serious thing. It's like, this is a thing that's calculated and intentional and malicious. And this guy comes in and throws around that term, and he's like, you're gaslighting and you don't even know it. So
isn't
first of all,
admitting that, in a way, admitting that you are an emotionally weak person that can be gaslit? Like, if you're questioning your own reality, isn't that partially your fault? Maybe your reality is bullshit, perhaps, or maybe it's not as solid as you thought it was, and I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's the other side of this. What I've noticed is that the term gaslighting gets used now, and I think probably Tumblr social justice warriors are responsible for the way the term is used by a lot of people now. And it's used to counter someone who's telling you that they think you're wrong. Like, a person starts telling you that, well, I disagree with what you're saying, and I think you're wrong for this, this, and this reasons. Well, you're gaslighting.
So, right. So by logically debating someone, you're gaslighting them.
Yes, exactly.
Right, so, which is obviously bullshit. That's not what you're doing at all.
Right. I'm just telling you I think you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's not gaslighting. So I'm gonna call the lefty guy Bob and the righty guy Steve. I don't remember what their names were.
Just call them Mr. Left and Mr. Right.
Okay, so Mr. Left threw out this term gaslighting. And then I was like, so I responded to that. I'm like, I'm gonna address this. So I responded to that, and I said, gaslighting is an intentional thing. Like, I don't see how you can do that without knowing you're doing it. Because that's what he said. He said, you're gaslighting and you don't even know it. So I said, I don't see how you can do that without knowing you're doing it. And then we got into a whole back and forth about what gaslighting is. And basically I was trying to make the point that that's kind of a serious accusation, and you're just cheapening the term by throwing it around like that.
Yeah, and it seems so obviously like a last-ditch effort, a Hail Mary when you've basically lost and you have nothing else to say. You
Or
can't
you're
actually
just
rebut what they're saying, so you just say you're maligning their intentions, which is what everybody does whenever they get backed
right.
into a corner and they can't find another way out. They start throwing punches.
You just don't want to put in the effort to respond to what the person actually said, which is, I mean, this came out really quick. Like he resorted to that really quick. So I think it was just a matter of not wanting to put the effort in because there wasn't any reason to be desperate at that point. But anyway, this reminded me of what you were talking about not too long ago with the term treason and how someone saw your episode about the Supreme Court, didn't actually listen to it, and said, blah, blah, you're committing treason. And
Right.
it's this cheapening of terms, this cheapening of serious terms. And maybe on the right, it's treason. Maybe on the left, it's gaslighting.
Yeah.
And I think it's dangerous. I think it's
Yeah.
really dangerous. Like, what words mean things. Like, words have to mean things. We have to have commonly agreed upon definitions of words for a language to mean anything. And if we just use these words to describe things that they don't really describe, like the way I put it in this discussion was calling bad argumentation gaslighting is like getting punched by your 9-year-old brother and calling it assault. It's like you cheapen the term. And if we use that term to describe this totally benign thing, what are we going to say? What are we going to call it when someone actually really does gaslight someone? Or what are we going to call it when somebody actually does commit treason?
Yeah. What other terms are we doing that with these days? I bet there's a lot. I mean, if we thought about it, like fascist, for example, right?
Not,
So anyone who disagrees with you is a fascist or a Nazi. Yeah, they're cheapening terms. It's
or even social justice warrior sometimes.
sure. Yeah, that's a cop out when someone maybe is making a good point.
Yeah.
You know, this is controversial, but probably sexual harassment, sexual assault. Those probably are we're kind of cheapening those terms. I think rape and sexual assault, they are two different things, but we talk about sexual assault and we just include rape. And it's like, it's very distinct rape compared to groping someone. I mean, obviously in the eyes of the law, there are distinctions, but in conversation, we use the same term for both, you know, and it cheapens it. So we either sexual assault we shouldn't include rape in that, or we should stop calling everything shy of rape sexual assault, call it something else. But yeah, I think we do that a lot.
Yeah. I think it's dangerous too.
Yeah.
It's like, you cry wolf too many times, and what happens when an actual wolf shows up?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. That just reminded me of that, and I kind of made a connection there. Like I kind of knew this was happening, but I don't know if this has happened. I kind of want to think that it's probably happened in the past. I think it's easy to say that, today is way different than any other time in the past. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I mean, I haven't lived in, times 100 years ago. I don't know what terms people were cheapening 100 years ago, but, or if they were, I don't know, maybe it is a totally new thing, but I also tend to think that people don't really change that much. So I don't know. It's probably been a problem in the past too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think in our lifetime, it's gotten more extreme.
Yeah.
Especially the past couple of years.
Yeah. And I think, so an obvious negative is like what you pointed out, it's cheapening the word. There's a boy who cried wolf aspect to it. But then besides that, it's an effective tool to mobilize your side, to say you turn everything into an existential crisis when the people you're arguing with are so evil and vile, and it rallies your side, right? So, I mean, it's effective but it's obviously very destructive. You know, I think the country is getting more and more divided, in part due to the language that we're using, you know, when we talk about all this stuff. When, you know, when a group of punks that cover up their face and go around like screaming that all cops are racist and there should be no borders and no USA at all, and they call themselves anti-fascists. Talk about cheapening the word fascist. Right. They are fascists. You don't just get to slap a nice label on yourself and then be righteous. Like, think about what they're doing, not what they call themselves. And so that's what they get to do. So anyone who disagrees with them, they get to call a fascist, they get to call a racist, they get to call a Nazi. You know, they get to say they're gaslighting them, and what they're doing is making this enemy image. They're demonizing the other side to anyone who is maybe considering jumping in on their movement or somewhere in the middle, or doesn't have the full perspective, but they can buy that stuff. You know, you can be like, look, check out how they're gaslighting everyone. They're trying to manipulate us. They're evil. You know, anything, and the right does it too. Anything you can do to demonize the other side mobilizes your own base and mobilizes your side into this us versus them existential crisis, you know?
Yeah. And not only do you get to mobilize your own side, you also get to dismiss everything the other person says.
Yeah.
If they're just trying to manipulate you, then you don't have to pay attention to them, because everything they say is manipulative.
Yeah. Well, I guess why don't we spend a minute and talk about that? You know, the media's coverage of these white nationalists and this, you know, white supremacy existential crisis that they're conjuring up. And, you know, we both just recently saw Matt Christensen's episode about this. And it's funny because I was kind of already thinking about doing something like that and talking about that. But so it's obvious, like CNN's coverage of this Charlottesville protest this year, the rally or whatever, the white nationalist rally. So, you know, everyone knows about it. Like 20 people showed up, and then hundreds of counter protesters showed up, had nobody to fight with. So they just started bashing the cops and literally like assaulting the media. And they're hollering things like all cops are racist, like no borders, no wall, no USA at all, or something like that. They want to burn the whole damn thing down. How is that not? And they want to do it by force. How is that not fascism? They're imbuing everything. The only thing they're missing is racism against people of color. Like, that's not what a fascist is. Nothing about the term fascism includes racism. Like, you don't have to be a racist to be a fascist. Like, that's not the same thing.
When these things go on, I wonder how much of this is true conviction and how much is we just have to beat the other side. Like, I was listening to Ben Shapiro today, and he was talking about this, and he was saying that for people on the right, he was talking about the Trump N-word thing. He was talking about how Trump has become a litmus test for people on the right. Like, you have to defend him. He's being viciously attacked by the left all the time, and if you don't defend everything he says, then you're complicit in attacking him, right? And so then the question comes up that, you know, how much of this stuff do people actually believe when they defend everything Trump's, you know, people on the right, when they defend everything Trump does, how much of that is, I actually am okay with that. I actually do believe that this, whatever ridiculous thing he did is okay. And how much of it is, I just need to beat the left. I just need to help beat the left. And it's kind of the same thing with Antifa, I think. Maybe it's totally possible that all of these people really are just anarchists and fascists, and just really do want the U.S. to not be a thing. But I wonder how many of them actually think that and have thought it through, and how many of them are just reacting to what they think is this looming white nationalist Nazi problem.
Right. Which is a myth. It's not a real thing. And if only they could be convinced of that.
Right.
Then maybe. But I'm sure the people, I have no doubt that there are people who run the show, that are people, the thought leaders know better, and they're manipulating the sheep with existential threats like that, and they know better. So I don't know, but that's the case with any sort of movement. You mobilize people with fear, and the people leading don't necessarily believe in what they're saying. They know it's an effective tool. Maybe they're just socialists who they just want socialism, right? But they know that they don't have enough socialists on their side, so they get all the angry people who, all the broken, angry, green-haired people who have a bachelor's degree in underwater basket weaving and can't get a job, and they have $80,000 in debt, and they're pissed off living in their parents' basement. And you get all those people together who are just pissed, and you give them one enemy image to try and unite them. And you don't even necessarily need to believe in what you're saying, just need something. So, I mean, it's so ridiculously obvious that there is not a white nationalism problem. That is a tiny fringe group with no institutional power whatsoever. They're not in the universities. They would get fired the moment that happened. They're not in the media. They would get fired as soon as that happened. But again, in the meantime, there are people like the what's that New York Times reporter that everyone's pissed off about?
Sarah Jeong.
Yes, Sarah Jeong.
Yeah, I think her name's Sarah.
Right. People like that. There are people who legitimately are on board with white genocide, or even if it's shy of something, if it's shy of white genocide, it is white racism, and they don't lose their job. In fact, they're defended by large swaths of the left. So it's a double standard. And the humongous difference is that those anti-white racists have institutional power. They get their own shows on Netflix, and they get jobs at universities, and they get jobs at the newspapers and in the media. Meanwhile, like Roseanne says something mean about somebody, which is not even necessarily racist, and according to her, had nothing to do with the race of the lady she was talking about, and she gets fired. And that's fine. I don't give a shit about Roseanne. I don't care. Right. But again, Sarah Jeong, she's literally spewing unambiguous white racism. She's not sugarcoating it.
Yeah. Difference is
Roseanne was like some possible metaphor that may have had a racist undertone. Maybe. She says it doesn't. And I don't give a shit that she was fired. But it's not just that Sarah Jeong isn't fired. She's defended, and she's held up as a hero, Such a double standard. So if anyone should be worried, it shouldn't be Antifa worried about white nationalists. So it's like, if anything, they are responsible for the growth of a white nationalist movement, which I don't think is even growing. It seems smaller this year than last year, at least publicly.
Yeah.
Right. So if it were growing, it's their own damn fault. They are making this us versus them thing. And the proper place to be is where I think I stand, which is, fuck the white supremacists, fuck Antifa, fuck them both. Like Matt Christensen said in the interview the other day, it's one jackboot or another jackboot. I don't want any jackboot, right? It's, I mean, if a neo-Nazi actually had institutional power, if they actually implemented their utopia, it would be a fascist government. But they have no institutional power. It's just a few assholes with no following and no support, and they're being held up by the media and being
basically what I'm seeing here is like it's an asymmetry in how the extreme left and the extreme right are allowed to act. So you do have a few people on both extremes who are saying explicitly racist things. Like you have these 20 people on the Nazi side who explicitly say they hate black people. And then you have a much bigger segment of the extreme left that explicitly says they hate white people or men or, straight people or whatever. And there's this asymmetry in what's either socially acceptable or even cool. It's like, you know, we're talking about Roseanne. She says something that, you know, if you read it, if you kind of read between the lines, maybe you could say that's kind of racist. But the thing is, you have to read between the lines. It's not explicit. You have to, you kind of have to think about it. And you could reasonably argue that it wasn't a race thing. I don't even know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But
Yeah, at the best case scenario, it was mean,
right,
but not racist.
right.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, it was mean. Worst case scenario, it could be seen as a racist statement. But the point is, it's not totally explicit, and she gets ruined for it. And then, meanwhile, on the other side, you have people like Sarah Jeong saying explicitly racist things. Like, there's no reading between the lines that's necessary when you say that. You know, I don't know what's something that she said.
So she enjoyed abusing old white men or something. That was one.
Right.
And there were a million others.
Or like, it's time to cancel white people.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That doesn't take any reading between the lines to say that's racist. That's like,
it's like, I wonder what she means by that.
yeah. Now, what do you mean by cancel white people? That's there. It doesn't get much more explicit than that.
Yeah.
So you have one side that's allowed to just say completely explicit things, and it's fine. It's even cool. Like, it's kind of the in thing to do right now among certain people. And then you have the other side who says something that's maybe still not okay, but it's not that explicit. And then there's just a totally disproportionate response to those things in the media, and the one side has all of the cultural and institutional power. There's an asymmetry there.
Yeah. And I think what's so funny is even when they're not being like anti-white in their rants, the far left is still overtly racist in what they think is good. Like, what the good that they think they're doing is racist. Intersectionality and identity politics, attributing certain attributes to people based on their race and ethnicity and sexual orientation, giving more credit to people based on their race is racist. Like, even if it's positive, even if you so even if you don't give a shit about white people and boo-hoo, poor white people, sorry, not sorry that people don't like you and are being racist towards you. But how is it not racist to give more credit to someone because they're black or Asian, or like, if you'll get more credit if you're black than if you're Asian? It's all about the oppression Olympics, and whoever is the most marginalized group gets the most credit, gets the most time to talk, gets the best leadership position in this group. And if you're a white dude, the best you can hope for is to just be a white ally. You just get to be out there. You don't get to talk unless you're screaming at a fascist, unless you're screaming at a racist, or whoever your group is calling a racist. You don't get to lead. You don't get to speak to the group that you're a part of, because you have no legitimacy. So even if you don't give a damn about the white people, which is obviously racist, it is the definition of racist to attribute anything to someone solely based on their race. To think that means anything about them, to think you know anything about them because of their race, is racist. Even if it's somehow a good thing, if you think it's a good thing, if you think a black lady would be a much better leader than a Hispanic dude, whatever, that is how they think. That's how they do this calculus in their mind. And they I don't know if they have a freaking point system, but they think that's how it works. And the very idea, thinking that way in itself, is the exact definition of racism. They are the racists. Even if you subtract the anti-white racism, which you shouldn't, but even if you don't give any credence to that, they are the exact definition of racist. They don't care about the content of your character. They only care about the color of your skin. They're just the worst. The absolute worst. Anyway. So there was also, like, the first thing that popped up and made me think about this before the Charlottesville thing you know, it was like a week before, and it was like ABC had some. I noticed it when it popped. It like popped up on my Twitter feed or something. I don't even subscribe to like to any news outlet, and I got this like thing that popped up, and it had a picture of it was a mugshot of some blonde white lady in maybe her 20s, 30s, and the headline was, it was like, woman protests arrest, says, quote, "I'm a purebred white lady. Why would you do this?" or something. And that was ABC News worthy to talk about that. Some asshole says something horrible. This isn't a thought leader. This isn't a leader of any kind. They didn't say anything about it. She's just a random woman that got arrested for, I don't know if it was DUI or something, or some traffic incident. She said something racist. I bet this happens every single day. What the hell? Why does it get coverage? It's not news that there are assholes out there who say mean things. That isn't news. So it's like they're trying to, this isn't even conspiracy theory. This is absolutely happening. They are perpetuating bull crap. It's not, they're trying to make the news, just like Matt Christensen said in that episode. You know, he beat me to the punch talking about this stuff, but he worded it perfectly and said the media are inventing the news now. They're making it a reality. So they tell everyone there's this huge existential problem, which is not a thing. And then there's a reaction to that. The police come out in huge numbers. Antifa comes out in huge numbers. And then they get pissed off at the police for overreacting and having too many out there. It's like they're making the news.
And then when you say it's not, when you say that existential problem isn't really a thing, people will point to this stupid little bullshit that happens. They'll say, "Oh, look at this headline about some woman who said something stupid when she got arrested. That proves it."
Right. Hide your kids, hide your wife.
It's like
game over, man.
Right. But yeah, it's like there's not any real evidence of this being a serious problem, and so then they'll turn to these invented things and use that as evidence. They're like, we have this huge existential problem with white nationalists. There's not any serious evidence for that being a big problem like we are saying it is. So here's a stupid thing that happened that we're going to call evidence, and we're going to use this invented thing that we made into news, even though it's not in any way newsworthy, and use this invented news as evidence of this problem.
Yeah, I mean, and I think above all, I mean, the biggest sin of the media in this aspect is not just the misinformation. It is a misinformation to even pretend it's a problem, right? They're not lying. They're just misrepresenting the truth of the matter, right? But I think the biggest sin is they're giving a platform to these people. They're making their voices heard by more people. They're perpetuating the problem. It's because, like, there's no reason to trust that the media, like any other company, their profit is the most important thing. That's always been the case, and I don't object to that. But they love headlines. They love controversy. Like, if everything were wonderful and peaceful, they would make no money. So it's not a conspiracy. That's just the way it is. They'll find the nastiest way to report something. I mean, it's not exactly untruth necessarily. It's just manipulating the truth. It's making things seem worse than they are. It's trying to invent a narrative. And same thing with all the shootings, right? Like the whole hands up, don't shoot in Missouri. That thing was completely fabricated. And yet that was the narrative, right? The narrative is always racist white cop shoots a black guy who didn't deserve it, was unarmed, surrendering, just laying there, waiting to be handcuffed, and instead got executed. Now, has that ever happened in the history of policing? I'm sure it has, but there's a narrative that they need to keep. And that's why anytime a cop shoots a white person, that doesn't end up on the news. Anytime a cop, or if like a black cop shoots a black guy, then that's not as newsworthy. Maybe it's a little bit, but that's not lying, right? Because they're still reporting true things. They're just misrepresenting. They're creating a narrative. So, and there's no reason, and they're doing the same thing, just with, it's the opposite. They're taking these white nationalists, these white supremacists, random onesie twosie people, and just by giving them a platform are exacerbating the problem and making it seem worse than it is.
Right. Well, where the lying comes in is with not with the reporting of the facts of what happened. I mean, maybe that happens maybe people lie about that stuff sometimes, but assuming the facts of the case are true, where the lying comes in is when they start telling you what this means for the country or for society. It's like a white cop shot a black guy. And, those are the facts of the case. We don't have all the facts yet. Like, maybe it was justified, maybe it wasn't, but this is more evidence of, racist cops are just going around shooting black people, shooting innocent black people. And that's where, like, there's another step. There's telling you the facts, and then there's another step that gets taken into, this is what this means. Like, this is how you should feel about the facts. You should feel outraged because, well, this is just more evidence that America is super racist and always has been and always will be.
Yeah.
Like, I could accept that the facts of that case are true as reported, but I don't know if that it doesn't necessarily constitute evidence of what they're saying it does.
Right.
Like there's an extra step there that we could have the conversation about whether that extra step is justified, but it's just assumed that it's justified.
Right. And that's what's dishonest. It's not, it may be true, but they don't know that. And they're saying it as if it is. And then sometimes it's obviously not true. Like, I mean, one example was, again, I don't know who this person was, but it was either some Democrat politician or it was some media member. But, it was when the Charlottesville crap happened this weekend. Again, it's like 20 people. And they mentioned that there was like a white supremacy rally. And then that was enough of a headline to conclude. So again, doing what you just said, the lie is when they say this never happened before Donald Trump was elected. Like, things are different now. People weren't so open about it. And then everyone responded to this tweet with like, how about the KKK march in the 1970s where they marched through a Jewish town, and like the ACLU famously like fought.
Oh yeah.
Defend their right to do it. Skokie, that's what it is. Skokie, Illinois.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like, people respond to that tweet with Skokie, Illinois, 1977. It's like, it's not hard to find. They've been doing this forever. There's nothing. So the lie is pretending that this is Donald Trump's fault and that this is some new thing. And the truth of the matter is there are fewer racists. The racists that are out there have less institutional power. We are making progress all the time from one generation to the next. We're getting better and better and better. Everyone's lives are getting better. So you're right. It's like, that is a straight up lie, So the facts are true. There was a rally. They were white supremacists. The lie is to say that this is new. It's an existential crisis. It's a growing movement, and it's all started with the election of Donald Trump. All of that is a lie.
The other fallacy here is that, like, these white supremacists are they're supposed to be simultaneously like pathetic losers who live in their mom's basement and can't do anything right, while also being this grave threat to our society. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You can't be both of those things.
Yeah. That's it for today's show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. So if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button below. If you're listening on any of our other audio platforms, please make sure you subscribe, leave ratings or comments. It really helps algorithmically in getting the word out about our show. If you like the show, please share it with your friends on social media. Please like the Philosophication with Ginger and the Beard Facebook page. And please make sure you comment down below. We really want to engage you guys in free and open conversation. That's really the whole point of doing this. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.